So there is a UDC plaque for members of the MARC camp inside the courthouse. I've got Liz's county park rec center names, and also occurred to me this morning that we might want to review on the History Commission the Sesquicentennial Civil War Footsteps Driving Trail that we established during the Civil War Sesquicentennial, which does visit several Civil War sites. So I have quite a list and ready when we get information on how they want this information presented to them.
Thank you, Mary. Any questions from Mary right now? It's nice.
I should add, I am listing all Civil War, not just Confederate, which was one thing that was mentioned by Supervisor Alcorn. And
right.
So there'll be battles that mention both of them. There'll be, markers that mention one or the other, general or whatever. But I'm listing everything that I can find.
Mary, is it possible, when we get into our discussion, you all will be reminded that this is a change from the board matter and motion, and that is that they want both Confederate and Union. And Mary, is there a way that the list can be set up so that it's separated? We have one side and then the other?
I do have that for the History Commission markers, and okay. I do have that for the state markers.
Good.
The others are just now kind of thrown together because there was about twice the list of state and History Commission markers.
Right.
So it's about 100 altogether.
Okay, thank you very much. And we will get into a little discussion a little further about the markers, but that's hopefully everybody is up to speed. Any questions from Mary?
I have a question, Herrick.
Yes, Karen.
You said it's now Confederate and federal. Does that apply to streets also?
No.
Just the marker. Just the markers.
Markers and monuments.
Only the markers. Only the markers. All right. Thank you. If pardon me?
I've made a summary of these notes that I'll send to you and Tammy. Of what I just said.
Okay, and you copy Denise on everything.
Okay.
And right. in this case, to Liz too, and then we'll make sure you can. Everybody in the CNC should have it. Be blind copy okay. Everybody but one. Okay.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. All right. At this point, we are ready to get into and I was going to hold it up, but since no one can see me, perhaps this is the.
We can see you.
Oh, good. And now I see Ann. Every once in a while, somebody pops up. There's Ann. And I've seen. Okay. So in all seriousness, this is the Q&A. And it's been, bless Ann and Mary for going to the meeting and having the discussions. Yes, Ann. I don't know what she's there. So if you all have it in front of you, I hope you do. The summary is very clear. We are to develop a clear and straightforward process. We develop a list of priorities. We provide the requested information in the time allotted, and we focus on the data that is accessible, which I think the time limit will drive that. I'd like to start with the first, and please, you'll just have to speak up if you have questions and identify who you are since I cannot see anyone. First, we made this statement that the commission assumes markers are included, although they were not specifically noted in the motion. And the types of markers we listed: commission, History Commission, VDHR, Park Authority, Civil War Trails, community plaques. And I believe Mary's expanded the list. The response was yes. They indicated that markers of all sorts should be included. Are there any questions about this particular part of our assignment?
Barbara, it's Greg, if I can ask a question.
Certainly, certainly.
We talked the other day. I'm just curious if you can help me with scope and mission creep. As I read the joint board matter from June 23rd, we have basically three mandates around the full inventory of Confederate street names, monuments, and public places. We're now moving to markers and to expand the discussion, private property and all Civil War markers. Um, that goes beyond what I would consider to be the plain reading of our mandate. And since I'm still relatively new to the county process, just curious how we make that leap when the board approved mandate seems pretty clear to me.
All right, first of all, I raised the issue in the question of markers because I was quite sure that just from experience, that when they said monuments, they also meant markers because there are, and so that's how that came about. It's up
Could I
to,
add something, Barbara? This is Mary.
yes,
Could I
Mary,
add something?
certainly.
One thing they were looking for is balance. In other words, in terms of looking at the markers in the county and all, is there a balance between Confederate and Union? And that's why that we suggested that it be listed. I'm under the assumption the final inventory will just show Confederate, that this may be something that the Board of Supervisors gets, but it's not part of the original mission. I may be wrong in that, but that was why I was understanding.
Right, all right. All I can go with is what the statement is here, and the fact that the two supervisors at the meeting, along with Ms. Flynn, made the statement that this is what they want, even though it goes beyond the motion by the full BOS, is where we are.
Barbara,
Yes. Oh,
Barbara, I think they probably, they worded it different ways in the motion itself, and this sort of fits under, remember how the first sentence of the motion itself says, street names, monuments, and public places in Fairfax County and on county-owned property. It's how they're deciding how to define public places, and they went for a broader definition to places that you might walk through as a resident. I got the impression they want to feel for, if you're a Fairfax County resident, what is your experience of Confederate names? So it's and that's really represented by this term public places, is how I came away from that meeting, Grant.
well, yeah. I think that the way I deal with it is that it was the prerogative of the supervisors who had drafted the motion to state what their inclination was, and we asked the question. And the way I ask it, if you'll note, it's the second point here, on the Q&A. The History Commission assumes markers limited to describing historical events, locations, and individuals involved are not subject to consideration. Well, that's not the way it was. The response was, no, they want everything. I was trying to limit it to where it's purely an interpretive marker. An example is Freedom Hill Fort. First of all, that's Union, but there's just markers that talk about what it was. The Battle of Drainsville, it talks about what it was. That's not Union or Confederate, that deals with the war and a battle. But they responded, as you all can see, that they want all markers. And you'll see further that I said that if we are not looking at those that have association or sympathy with the Confederacy by civilians, because the motion is specific to Confederate military or governmental people. However, and so my example was the Laura Radcliffe's marker, and also at Frying Pan Meeting House, which has all kinds of history, but also is involved with as one of Mosby's places. But as you see, they keep coming back to it. They want a full inventory of all Civil War related markers in Fairfax County and topics covered. So when you are in a meeting like that and the supervisors who wrote the motion make that statement, there you are.
Yeah, no, and
That's where you are.
yeah, this is Greg again. So that's very helpful. In other public policy settings I've been involved with at the national level, you can't go on and expand things without going back to get a reinterpretation or a formal amendment or a change in a rule. But if you're telling me that the sponsoring supervisors have that prerogative to interpret for the board on behalf of the board, that's fine. I'll go with whatever you determine to share. I'm just trying to clarify how what the scope parameters are in the final analysis.
They were set for us, and if one of the supervisors, another supervisor wants to say, excuse me, but that's not what was meant. That's not, the History Commission simply here is the group that is supposed to do the research and provide the information. So yes, it's.
Last question on the getting into private street names or private property, as in Mosby Rock, just to jump ahead.
Right.
As I read the new Virginia state law, which I think is the governing law in our case, again, I'm not a lawyer, it only speaks about monuments and on localities, public places.
Right.
It excludes cemeteries, it excludes private property. So how do we make the leap to private roads and private places and inanimate objects?
Well, I've talked informally with Anne and also with Denise about this, because this was added on, and if we can assume anything, I think the list is the focus is on the public. If you're still talking, Greg, I can't hear you.
No.
Okay, so
I'm listening.
Okay. My suggestion as we move along, particularly because of the tight time frame that we have, is our first priority is public, all public. Then if we have to, a second phase or an adjunct information is the private, and that will be that's perhaps even more time consuming. So we have to address it, but I think that we need to focus first. Primost is on the public because that's what the original thing is stated.
But
And they
my point is we have no authority on private land as I read the new state law. Again, not a lawyer.
Right.
Would love to get the county attorneys to weigh in, but again, I'm concerned about scope and mission creep.
Right. Understand.
Yeah.
Understand.
One of the ways they expressed it was they would like,
This is Anne. Go ahead.
This is Anne. Because the question specifically said, you were good to put a couple of examples, Barbara.
Okay.
And they said, you know what we'd like to be able to do is if somebody inquires about Mosby's Rock, this was an informal response, but if someone were to inquire, they could go to the list and go, oh no, that's on private property.
Okay.
That was the gist of that. Not that they necessarily they know they can't touch a number of these areas.
Barbara, this is Denise.
Yes, Denise, please.
Thank you. I think something that the commission and the committee needs to keep in mind is that you are just information gathering.
Right.
That's it. You're creating a list. So when it comes to the application of the state law, it's nothing that the committee or the commission is going to be dealing with. That's for the supervisors. You've been asked to create a list, and the list may have been expanded a bit to include some private property, but it's not for the commission to decide. It's just information gathering.
That's right. And I repeat the last statement that I made in my opening remarks. We're clerks, we're neutral, we're doing the information gathering and the research. We're not advocating, we're not informing. that's what our assignment is. And so we need to proceed that way. What I'm trying to do is to help us figure out how we can get the primary done, which is the public, and also respond to the request for the information on the private. And what they do with it ultimately is their decision. But I think, Anne, that your statement and your explanation rings true. They want to be able to answer, because they too are you know, in a place where people are going to be asking questions, and so they can have an answer. Well, yes, Mosby Rock, it's Mosby, it's Confederate, but it's on private land, so that they will know that, and we will have provided them the details. Phyllis mentioned that our Board of Supervisors, majority of them are new, and so we don't know what their institutional knowledge or their staff's knowledge is of all of the nuances of Fairfax County history, quite frankly. We know. That's why they tasked us. You're the public historians. Can you do this for us? Because we need that information. So you look at it that way.
Okay, no, thankful. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see where we are. And we've dealt with the civilians. We've dealt with all kinds of markers. We have talked about the private. Again, their response is the priority is Fairfax County owned and controlled places, but they would like a comprehensive inventory to include additional items such as cemeteries, neighborhoods, HOAs, etc. And then the next was a confirmation that items located on private lands will not be listed. This is where I offered Mosby's Rock, and you all will see the response. This is number 5. They would like to be aware of these items to the extent that it does not require extensive effort and results in delays to the project, which is their way of saying what I think, attempted to say. Now, the next one is interesting. Number 6. Are the towns of Herndon, Clifton, and Vienna and the cities of Falls Church and Fairfax to be inventoried? Anne and I anticipated a no. But what we received is for cities, no. For towns, yes. And so we have 3 towns. We have the town of Herndon, we have the town of Clifton, and we have the town of Vienna. So this comes up, this connects to the idea of having partners to help us with the research, only with the research. And Ann and I have talked about including, we want to send a template. This was Lynn's suggestion, a template to everybody, any group that's going to help us, such as the Civil War Roundtables, UDC, the Sons of the Confederacy. If any of them, what we need from them is information to help us on our research, their resources, to simply provide us with names that we can match with the streets, these kinds of things. So we want to explain to, and I'm open to ideas here, to those in Vienna, Clifton, and Herndon, that this is a task assigned to us, and we are simply collecting information. We're not doing anything. We're simply collecting information of what they have within their town limits.
Barbara,
Yes.
I don't know if you can see, but Lynn Parvey Hodge is asking to be recognized.
No, I can't see her, so yes.
Okay. So Lynn, can you unmute yourself?
Sure. All right, thank you. Obviously, this is a question that's near and dear to my heart. I just want to ask a few clarifying questions here, Barbara, but would you rather have me wait to the end, or is it okay to ask right now?
You can ask. This is why I asked you when you said
Yes.
that yes, it'd be nice to have you, because you are the town of Clifton.
Right.
Okay.
So here's, we are, oh man, so much has happened between the time you and I talked and today. Just me do a quick aside, and then I think it'll help circle back to my question.
You have to make sure it's only on this subject for the purposes of this recorded meeting, not your great project that you're doing. Okay.
Okay. Well, it sort of affects all of that. So, all right, let me cut to the chase on my question.
Thank you.
Do you and Mary and so forth, do you all see that this is something that then the local commissioner can work with the town on, that the commissioner should do? I'm in my head, I'm trying to discern how best to approach the town on this, because I've not presented this yet to the town, and it does need to be presented to the town. But I want to be able to go with a sense of, here's who I would recommend, or here's the team I would recommend we approach. So that's the kind of clarification I need. And I would imagine also the town of Herndon and Vienna probably need the same.
Well, that's part of developing the template, which I'm going to ask somebody to.
Okay, that's fine. Right.
No, and you're a resident of Clifton, you're on the History Commission, and so we turn to you to identify the people that we should contact to say this is what the help we need, and then it's up to, in other words, unless you want to go through your streets yourself. And
There's not that many if it's just the
they're
town.
not.
If
I
it's just the town, right? We're just talking about town.
It's
the suburb.
just the town. It's just the town.
Okay, it's pretty cinchy, actually. Yeah, okay.
Okay. I suddenly see Anne, Lynn, and Greg. That's very exciting. So any other questions? But that's part of the process that we have to deal with. We obviously have Anne in Vienna, and we have you in Clifton, and I don't believe, Greg, you and Carol have Herndon in Drainsville.
Herndon, part of Herndon, Great Falls, and McLean.
Right. So whether you know someone or Anne, since you've been working on the other issue, somebody that you can contact, go to again with our letter, which has to be drafted.
When I was talking to the Historical Society, Herndon Historical Society people about this, they said, oh, if you want to do it, if you're going in the unlikely event you're going to want an inventory of Herndon, we recommend you get in touch with somebody. So
Good.
I have that in an email, which
Good.
I can, which
Right.
I'll share with the two Drainsville Commission members. So see if that makes sense to you.
Okay.
If I could contribute a name from Herndon, it's Barbara Glaskus, who's a retired
she's
teacher.
in your committee, right?
Wait,
Yeah, great.
I've got her.
Mary,
This is Carol.
Carol, she's the one. Barbara's the one who recommended I contact the town clerk or somebody.
Okay.
I mean, I think the way
just looking at the cities of Falls Church, I did not include them in my list, so I'll go back and get the markers and stuff from City of Falls Church. I don't know how I skipped them. I'll go back and add.
You don't need cities. Cities are out, Mary. The city.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
No cities.
That's right. Never mind.
We're free on Fairfax City and we're free on Falls Church. We're dealing with the three towns. Greg, do you have a question? No. Okay.
I'm good.
All right. So I need somebody that would like to draft the letter for me, for us. I think it should come from Anne because she's the chair of the commission, and so this committee feeds into the commission. So I think the letter that should go to those organizations that we want to tap and to the town should come from the commission as a whole. If no one here wants to raise their hand, which I can't see, we'll deal with it tomorrow. Okay. My question related to this is, I'm asking, I was thinking of people that have, organizations. Primarily, I was thinking of the Civil War Roundtable and the UDC. But the response from the supervisors, yes, they should be included in other historical societies and organizations as appropriate. So we have the list, and I think that will be up to, unless somebody wants to volunteer, that will be up to Ann and me to go through as a first pass and verify organizations that can provide us the research information that we need. Primarily, as you all can see, The markers are pretty well organized. The park authority is organized. What you're looking at are the 17,000 streets, right? So that's the kind of information. And Greg, if you put your other Civil War roundtable hat on, do you think that, I'm assuming that you all have that kind of information. You're familiar. In other words, if our young intern is going to come in and work on the streets, but how familiar is he with the names of Confederate, well-known Confederate military governmental personalities? So we need to be able to feed into him some information, some names that he can use in his sorts.
Yeah.
Comments?
So Barbara, this is Greg. So the Bull Run Civil War Roundtable has no, independent library or resource, right? I think we could be most helpful once a list was developed to check that list. But unless, and I'm happy to do outreach to some of our individual members who are authors, who have written books, who have the experience, some of which I have, some of which others have. We can be helpful that way, but we don't have, staff resources.
No, I know, I understand.
Yeah.
We just need to pool. This is the commonplace information, and you may know. Like I learned from Carol and Ann, because I didn't know, it's not in my neighborhood, that Pickett Road it's not Gettysburg Pickett. It's the man named Pickett that lived on the road. It has nothing to do with Pickett's charge.
Right.
But somebody had to tell me that. That's a knowledge of a place, and that's why our hope is that the commissioners know their districts and can at least make a beginning, because we just have this huge, my first sense with the 17,000 is to quickly eliminate all the numbered ones. That should reduce it a bit, right? So,
Barbara?
yes.
This is Mary.
Yes, Mary.
I would suggest that if you have a copy, you start with Brothers and Cousins by William Page Johnson, which are Fairfax County Confederates. And it gives their ranks and it gives their service. I mean, he's done an incredible amount of research. It's no longer in print. It is in the Virginia room. I have my personal copy I got off Amazon a long time ago. But that would be a good source. And there's other sources in the Virginia room of lists of Fairfax County Confederate soldiers that we can use.
All right. That's good to know. I was not aware of that. All right.
So, Barbara, this is Greg, and again, I don't want to jump ahead, but we're supposed to develop a comprehensive list, understand the need to prioritize that. Are we looking only at Fairfax County Confederate names, or you use the phrase in the Q&A about generally known individuals or well-known Confederate officers or locally well-known Confederates?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm assuming we're picking up Robert Lee, Stonewall Jackson, Jeff Stewart, in addition to locals. That still won't get us to a comprehensive list as the board originally asked for, but it gets us at least a preliminary list,
right,
of Confederate names we can work with to identify street names and then figure out if they're named after the correct individual.
And that came from Tammy and her suggestion, and I don't know who all received the message, but to tap into low-hanging fruit first.
Right.
And that's where I came up with the currently virtually unknown people, because this could go on for years.
Right.
And so I think that we should take, I don't know what you all think, I'm just one voice here, but would be the assumption that those are the ones we're looking at.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, because otherwise so I checked on some numbers. There are anywhere from 750,000 to 1 million Confederate soldiers, right? There are 400 Confederate generals. I don't know how many were in the Confederate civil service. I know some locally, so that's not an issue, but there are a lot of names out there.
I understood from Ann and Mary that this young man, the intern, hopefully in his generation, he's good with with data, and I don't know if he could do some sort of subsorts. We now have the streets by magisterial districts, which is a big help. Thank you again, Denise. So if there's a way, we have to talk to this young man, and if we only have him until July 31st, this is even more drastic and difficult, all right?
Yeah.
To somehow find how to parse and break up this huge piece here into workable pieces.
Yeah.
Also, I'm going to use Tammy again with the Cooper Road. That's 16 hours of work. It's an incredible piece of research. It's laid out just perfectly. It's fascinating, but it's 16 hours on one street. And at the end, when we talked last night through Chris and 19th Century Newspaper, she was able to confirm that it was not a Confederate Cooper. It
Yeah.
was a person that lived there.
Yeah.
So this is what we're facing, is how to take, and I said this to Tammy, all you all that do this incredible research in the history, the supervisors say, oh, the commission is wonderful. This is what they love to do. Yes, but to consummate researchers, we have to somehow, we're just taking the tiny bit off the top, and that's a big challenge in how we organize this. Greg.
So 2 questions. In the Historic Records Center, if my memory serves me correctly, there's a listing of the all those men who were in the Fairfax Rifles.
Okay.
And I know you can make I can make it, or someone can make an appointment with Heather and go to do research there now under current COVID rules, but you have to have an appointment. And I'm happy to do that if that helps. Second point, do we know, is the Virginia room open for targeted research? So could you go in and find Paige Johnston's book, and somebody could, Xerox the index or whatever would be appropriate to use those names as well. Again, in your interest of prioritizing.
This is Tammy, and the Virginia room is not open yet for anybody up to this point. I think that the librarians are in there a couple days a week, maybe just getting in there. But it's not open for research yet. Chris does great things if you request from him.
So could we request Chris?
Say we need to go, he's county staff too, so I think we should go to Chris and say, this is what we need and how do we go about it in this environment?
I
That would be my suggestion.
This is Mary.
Yes, Mary.
Let me get my copy of Brothers and Cousins, and I'll at least copy the index. Okay?
Oh, that would be great, Mary.
That's good.
I can get that and scan it or mail it to you all or whatever. And it will be Union and Confederate, but at least that's a beginning.
That's right.
I'm going to start looking. There's got to be some online sources, maybe with the Library of Virginia, I believe. So while we're talking, I'm looking for that too.
Okay. And Ann, didn't you tell me that you had found a list of 400?
Oh yeah, I mean that's what I guess that was what Greg was referring to, the 400 generals, which is the top, just part of the officers, and this is not necessarily limited to officers. I think we need to be careful because I think it's so hard when we're talking about this term generally known and well known. We're going to get so many obscure names. I mean, oh my gosh, just looking at Wikipedia at Confederate, the 400 plus Confederate generals that they list is there's a lot of those people who are not household names, and they're not likely to be here.
Right.
So they kept the supervisors that Mary and I met with, one of the things they kept saying, and I think it's been repeated in our agenda here, or the Q&A summary, is the time allotted for this is very short.
Right.
And so we do have to prioritize, and they've tried to, the idea, I want a different phrase than low-hanging fruit, but it's a good one.
Well, I adapted that.
It's a good one. It really says something. I mean, we're not supposed to do it slapdash, but we're supposed to do, well, kind of in order. The more obvious, the more everyday.
Right.
If it is somebody named Cooper, well, who knows this Confederate Cooper? Nobody but Tammy. And so nobody, we might, and that's not a Confederate anyway, as it turns out. So the thing is, this process will miss potentially a lot.
Right.
But the bulk of them we're actually gonna get the main ones. We just have to be really careful about the limitations that this process has, and it's not in the time frame allotted. If we need to have this by well before the December meeting for them,
We have to have it
then
at the end of October.
we're just going to have to draw it to a close and say, as of now, this is what we've done.
Right.
And here it is. If we had all the time in the world, we might do the following 10 things.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm going to read again what the answer was to this question. This is number 7. The response: this is perhaps the most difficult area to research. Yes. The term generally known individuals seems an appropriate approach. These are the supervisors speaking. History Commission can decide on a process that focuses on well-known Confederate officers and on locally well-known Confederates. I think of Stringfellow and Mosby, as it is not possible to capture every name. Also, there will be a significant portion of the list that will be ambiguous because in many cases, there will be no means of verifying whether a common last name, for example, Johnson, refers to a Confederate. So that's basically what you just said, Ann. That tightens it a little bit. So this, I think, again, is the most difficult piece of this to break up. And when we all first got the assignment, the thought was if those of us could look at particular districts, our own magisterial districts, we might have some of the commonly known information about that area, but it also would somehow put the research into some sections. I'm open to, and Phyllis, Tammy said that perhaps she could help Phyllis a little bit because they're together there, and that's, we're dealing with Lee District. So any other comments? We obviously can't resolve it today, but I think we're coming up with some beginning strategies that we can flesh out. Comments more?
So, Barbara, it's Greg again. So, isn't the first step to get the list, as you're suggesting?
Yes.
As I look at at least the street name index you sent around by district, I find half a dozen names that at least I recognize based on my research and knowledge as quote unquote Confederate names, and they range from Stewart to Jackson to Mosby to Windsor and Fulton and some other names that may be less well known to the general person, but nevertheless were Confederates here during the Civil War. So that would be, it's got to be a two-step process. And then we have to figure out, are the street names related to the individuals that we've researched? And that's going to be equally hard, I'm guessing, right? Based on Tammy's search with Cooper names. So, but I think the first step is very quickly through the intern's help, through the couple books that are available through whatever online resources, you can develop that at least an initial list to work from and start the culling of the street names.
Well, and I think so. If the names are there, again, anything that we can give. Today is the 10th, and so we need to know when actually we're going to have this young man to work, and then we need to have very specific things of what you do. If you're in this district, these names, all of this takes some time to think through. We've all done research, but it's all been in a totally different context. And I just immediately of Drainsville District and Jackson, and the Jacksons were Drainsville Tavern. The Jacksons owned lots of land out there. So for all you know, that Jackson Road is that Jackson family and not Stonewall. And that's just one little place. So
thank you, Barbara.
But don't forget.
Thank you, Barbara. I was going to email Greg on that. Yeah, thank you very much. This is Carol.
Okay.
Hold that thought. Don't forget James W. Jackson. That's his home place, right?
Yes. That's
And
right.
he-
That's right. That's right.
He's an officer in the Alexandria Artillery, so
Yeah.
We're gonna
we
end
don't
That's
up,
know.
McLean.
Yeah.
That's McLean.
Okay, Ann?
this is Ann. A lot of things will start off on the ambiguous list. You know, if it's called Robert E. Lee Drive, then
We know.
it's not ambiguous. And if we know it's like Pickett, we know it isn't ambiguous, but doesn't need to be on the list. But we might actually include it just so they don't think we missed it. I mean, if the Southern Poverty Law Center, since it thinks it's named after General Pickett, we maybe want to be clear. But
They're
you know,
wrong.
we'll end up with 90% or more on the ambiguous list, and then in the time that's allotted, we'll just try to chip away. And maybe we have to make up rules to ourselves. Don't spend more than X number of minutes or hours trying to get to the bottom of it. I don't know, but it's one of the harder parts of what we're doing.
I have a question. This is Tammy.
Yes, Tammy.
And I'm very thankful for, I sort of, consider this our marching orders, the answers to these questions. Like Greg, I saw some areas that had creeped in that I really thought we weren't going to have to handle. And my question is, has the rest of the Board of Supervisors seen this? And just, I'm wary of, we think this is our marching orders and we're moving forward. And I don't know when they might see this or after we turn in our list, if they then, like, if we've gone too far, I don't want to waste time. You know what I mean? I don't want our scope to change. So is the rest of the Board of Supervisors going to see this soon or not until we've actually done the work?
Denise, you can speak to that.
What I can say is that I will go back to Rachel Flynn and I will ask her advice about distributing this to the rest of the Board of Supervisors. I do know that Supervisor Alcorn and Supervisor Palchik were given the opportunity to review the questions and answers before they were distributed to the committee.
Right. That's thanks to Ms. Flynn, because we weren't, we thought if we got her okay, but she's correct, they were in the meeting. And I don't know, Tammy, that's a very good question, but it's not for us to say, by the way, Supervisor Alcorn, this is Barbara Nafe, and did you share this with your colleagues? Because it's not something we can. So I think we want to, it's, believe it or not, this discussion is making progress on it. And
yep.
You can see, Greg, why I said we're not talking about the format today. We're still dealing with the what and how to develop it. So
Barbara?
Yes.
This is Mary.
Yes, Mary.
I am looking at the Library of Virginia has the Virginia Department of Confederate Military Records, muster rolls, pension records, etc. It looks like it might be on microfilm. What I'd like to do is volunteer that let me be the liaison with Chris Barbershop and say, where can we find this information with these libraries closed, etc. And he should be able to help us. And I'd be glad to do that.
All right. That's wonderful, because if it's anything like the Union Wall records that many of us have used in the archives, that you can be there for years. So
exactly. So I mean, I'm envisioning the shelves in the Virginia room, and there are rosters, et cetera, there. It's just right now I can't think of their titles, but I'll continue looking. But I'll work with Chris, and we'll come up with a list, a beginning list.
Okay. Is everyone in agreement with that?
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right. Now, another point here while we're at this. We read that Supervisor Harity's comments is that he wanted to know when names occurred, if they were in the 50s and 60s, and only those that refer to with obvious Confederacy connotation. That was our questions, and the response was, this is where that was including private streets that can be separated from public streets at a later time. They want to know who has the authority to rename going forward. That's not us. When History Commission is not responsible for identifying who has the authority of any renaming. Regarding supervisor heritage requests, that information can be added if known, which I read as a lower priority, and it's a well-meant addendum to the motion, but no. Now, Anne happens to know Wayne Hampton in Vienna. She knows why it was renamed, and it had a previous name. But that level, that to me is like a, not even secondary, that's a tertiary level of research as far as Barbara personally thinks. So I don't know what you all think, but I think that helps us a little bit to narrow down what we actually are going to have to do. Thoughts? Now, Mike is the only commissioner from Providence, and he could not attend the meeting. So I have to reach out to him as far as what's in the Providence district. So I think the important thing on a less overwhelming note, the commission assumes that other county agencies will address matters such as the legal issues, and that is a yes, because originally it was really hard to tell, and we were, the assignment is huge, so we do not have to address the legal and who's going to pay for it. That's another county group. It's not us, and that's helpful. And it also, I wanted to make clear about this. The History Commission assumes that the board's directive to recommend guidelines for the renaming or replacement process of Confederate monuments, street names, rec centers, and parks does not imply recommendations of specific actions. And the answer to that is yes. We are not, this allows us to be neutral. Again, we are offering guidelines. And my sense is we need to provide as an addendum to our report guidelines from public history organizations, starting with the National Trust. And these are the guidelines we as a commission are recommending they follow, which is you don't destroy history, but you don't revere it and glorify it. You just tell it. But we don't have to do anything but provide the guidelines. We do not offer recommendations for specific actions, such as take this down, put an extra sign on that. That's not our job. And that to me is a good step forward. Tammy.
So a guideline, for example, might be if the property is associated, like if there's a home there that belonged to a Confederate person, then that name might be left there for, history, just instructional purposes. If it's not a glorification, if it's a label that a family lived there. So that might be a guideline without giving a specific recommendation.
If I may.
This is my sense. That's why I wrote the question, the original question that way, is when it's just, if it's factual, then leave it. So I'm not sure how we would, but I agree that should be my sense. That's my intent, because that's history.
I didn't know whether that was a guideline or an advocacy. You know what I mean? I feel like there's a gray area.
When we get to it, we'll have to talk. But I think but if we are following, and if you all have had a chance to reread the letter, or those of you that weren't on the commission, the letter that we agreed and sent to the Board of Supervisors in September of 2017, we said our position is that of the National Trust. You don't destroy history, but this is the history, the factual part holds. Mm-hmm. And so that to me is why that's a good guideline to give the supervisors as well. But that's rational, but I don't know if there's other thoughts on it. They find, I think when we finish the inventory, it's my sense, and some of you are more, more familiar with your parts of the county, that the list of controversial monuments or markers, state or whatever kind, they're not as many. We are having to look at the whole world to shrink it down,
Right.
really and truly. Now I know Mary's found 27. Mary, is that right? 27 references to Mosby.
The historic marker database, I found 28. Now
28.
that's all over the South, not just us. But yeah, 28 mentions of Mosby.
Right. Well, he's a local folk hero, so that's what you're going to have here. So yes. So, are there any other questions? I hope this has made some sense to you all. I think we've clarified some things. We've raised some issues. Tammy, bless you for attempting to take notes on this.
Yeah, I don't know how successful I've been. I got some notes.
We've all attempted, and when you send them out, I think everyone is free to correct if they're and it doesn't have to be, Denise, correct me here, it doesn't have to be that detailed. It's the discussion on the process. It's the discussion on the content. It's the discussion on our assignment based on this document. Correct, Denise?
That's correct for the committee minutes. It does not have to be detailed minutes.
Okay.
So an executive summary.
They can be general, and the meeting was recorded. Unfortunately, I was busy doing technological things with trying to get people on the line, so I missed the staff reports, but we start up with Mary on the recording.
Okay.
So all the discussion is captured, and if you need, I'll certainly send you my staff report, Tammy.
Oh, that would be great.
Yep. I'll distribute it to the whole committee.
That'd be great.
And Denise, do you have my opening comments?
I do not, Barbara. I apologize.
I wrote them up, so I will send them to you because I was attempting to, define the sphere in which we're operating. So I think they should probably be included. In fact, I know they should be.
Yes, definitely.
And Liz is Liz still around? I don't see her.
She stepped away for a moment.
Okay. Well, anyway, she can get hers too. So is there anything else? I don't want to cut anyone off.
Barbara,
Yes.
two quick process questions. One, are we going to establish some regular call schedule for this committee? And two, any kind of information requests, so we're not bombarding county staff needlessly. Do we run through you or Denise? So for example, and maybe Mary's going to do this, but contacting Heather Bollinger to see what resources she has there at the Historic Record Center. Is that just, are you going to direct that, or is Mary?
That I'd like a comment on. As far as I'm concerned, as long as you copy Denise on everything, and because she's not only a member of the committee, she's also our staff liaison, and she's now reporting all the way up. So that's important. And if you would copy, if you don't mind, remember you only send to one and blind copy everybody else. But I think when people send individual questions, it would be helpful if everybody knew about it so that you're not being redundant in your own requests.
Right.
Denise, do you have comments on that?
I do want to say that I did, if it is helpful, I reached out to Heather Bollinger today to get an answer to a question for the entire commission. Okay. And she responded, and I will give that information to the entire commission. So if it is helpful to work through me to disseminate to 20 people, for that exact reason, Greg, that other people aren't being bombarded with multiple questions. So I'm happy to do that. Yeah, I am staff to this committee now, and a certain amount of my time is allowed for this.
Right. Well, and I hate to overwhelm Denise, but she's the central. As long as you copy me, so I'm aware that everyone is that Tammy is aware of what Greg or Ann is asking, and etc. So that's very helpful. And also remember, we're the core dealing with this, but we have Lynn's listening in today, but we have the other commissioners that are obviously going to be interested and hopefully be able to contribute as their time allows. Right?
Barbara, I was wondering if Mary had made the suggestion that she liaison with the Virginia room for the Confederate names. Perhaps, and I'm sorry, Greg, to volunteer you, but perhaps you would like to reach out to Heather Bollinger to liaison with the court records.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to do that. I know Heather quite well and happy to do that.
Okay, that's wonderful.
And then Barbara, so what, are we going to meet like every other week on a call, or what
would
you
you all like? I think we do need, you may find this chaotic. I found it very helpful, and it brought up all kinds of, and Tammy's putting her an up sign. So I think, what do you all think? I think every other week, because I think every week is going to be, we won't have made that much progress, quite frankly. So, and Denise, I'm counting on you being able to talk to our intern and find what it is that he can contribute before we say, here's what we want you to do.
Yes, I will. As I said, I just, right when we were going into the meeting, I got the email from Supervisor Alcorn's office.
Right.
So one of my first things when I get out of this meeting is to get back with them and tell them that, yes, we greatly appreciate the help and see exactly what times he's available, what he is able to do. We are still working virtually, so we won't have in-person contact with him, but we can get him information and, you know, whatever it seems to me that the step that's needed now is to get the Confederate names list and then cross match it with the street names.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
We've got two weeks, but that first day, that first collection of the Confederate names is going to be, you know, essential.
And I go back to our partnering group. If any of you, like within your local group, the second hat you wear, like Greg, if there is somebody beyond, in addition to you, from the round table that is willing to put in some hours, that's what we're asking for. You know, it's just, can you consolidate and collect some information for us, please? We are in dire need of it because this is the crunch time. And you can always, I think, point out that if they can help us, the sooner we get the clear information, the sooner the Board of Supervisors can have the public hearings and the community outreach that they have agreed to in their motion, and then can see what needs to be changed and what does not need to be changed. And that's, to me, is what you pass on to people that feel very passionate about this whole subject. And I know Anne has Historic Vienna. She's moving them along, right?
Oh, yeah, we're moving well. So, Barbara.
Yes.
For the people who aren't on this call, who don't, I mean, they've seen this, but we want everybody to start working. So are we going to give them a work plan and say, start producing something?
I think you, Madam Chair, and I should talk about it, and it should come to you, but I certainly think so. Don't you all?
Okay.
I mean, we're here kind of churning around, digging in the dirt, but we need somebody else to help us plant, if you'll pardon this crazy analogy. But at this time, that's kind of what I feel. So.
Barbara, it's Mary.
Yes, Mary.
I really do feel like we need a framework. In other words, you know, we're talking about the low-hanging fruit and the generals. So are we, you know, saying to them, just list the generals for the time being, list any Confederates you find, or, you know, what kind of message are we going to give to them?
You mean to the commission as a whole?
People who are volunteering to do research.
Well, that comes in with the letter that it looks like I'm going to draft because I didn't get a volunteer. So we have to say, these are our specifics. This is what we need at this time. This is a time-driven project. Right?
Okay, I'd be glad to help with the letter. I just don't know what we're asking for exactly.
Okay.
So I guess that gets to what Greg was talking about, like what are the columns in our spreadsheet?
Exactly.
And I'm also a firm believer that they give us their source. not just their brains?
Well, yes, well, if they know, yes. If they know the street, if they know that a street is named Jeb Stewart Drive, then you know what it's about.
Yeah.
But but I come back to Cooper, and I think, Greg, you were working on Windsor, is that right?
Windsor's another Confederate name, yeah.
Yeah, and so, so that kind
Well,
of.
that's like my street name, my neighbor lives on is Bullock, and she says she just tells people it's spelled like Sandra Bullock, but it's actually named after Confederate General Bullock.
All right, so I think we do need we need that to be done, and if anybody wants to offer, I'm certainly not a one-woman band here at all. I'm simply trying to keep everything sort of organized and moving forward, and so if any of you.
So this is Tammy. I was going to say that while my template that I had for Cooper Road was very long, I think that the headings, perhaps the date that things were named or renamed, references at the bottom, that kind of thing, maybe those headings, but in a more streamlined fashion might be a start.
I think so too. And I'm not sure how many people got to see your template. So if you wouldn't mind, is there any way you can kind of adjust it a bit so it's not.
Sure, I can just
as much
the headings.
It has the critical stuff for what we need. A street, yes. And then we can distribute that to, if we can get it in a timely manner and get our letter out, and our request, this will say, okay, this is what we need from you, and here's the format that we need it in.
Okay, I can provide that to Denise.
Okay. Does that sound great?
Yeah, who's the repository of all this information?
Pardon me?
Yeah, I thought Tammy's template was very helpful, so I would support that. That makes sense to me.
Yes, and I will make sure that you all get it, because I'm not sure it went to everyone. Anne, okay?
I think it's great. I think it gives us a methodical way to look at each possibility. And I mean, we may find as we use it more, we tweak it a little bit, but it gives you the basics, and I think it's great. I love that you went at it that way, Tammy.
Well, and also, Tammy, we will say in our letter that if you can't fill in everything for everyone, fine. Do what you can for each individual specimen, right?
Sure.
And this the intern hopefully will, or someone in the Fairfax County world, even better would be to take this template and make it be able to automatically fill a spreadsheet.
We hope so.
Because then, if somebody's got to do data input later, oh my God, that's not going to be any of us.
No, it's not.
That's one thing. If they say the priority is Fairfax County owned places, and it would be Fairfax County owned places that are not FCPA and are not FCPS, because that's not
that's not us.
Schools on anyway. And then Liz has already done FCPA, so we need the universe of the others.
Exactly.
From the county, so we can knuckle right down on those, since that's priority one. Street names, they recognize as a big thing, and we'll just do the best we can, but the other priorities are come first.
Well, and I think I asked Denise and she, I think, it's to be determined, does the county have any kind of a listing, I imagine through taxes, but of like the HOAs in the county, or the developments. And I think, Denise, am I quoting you right? You said up to the
yeah. So I've started a list of things that nouns in the county that might be named for Confederates, meaning HOAs, subdivisions.
I blanked on the word. Thank you.
Shopping centers, And I'm going to reach out to various data collection agencies in the county and
Good.
see if we have that information available. I think we have it for the subdivisions, just the names of the subdivisions. But again, what we're going to get is a list, like the street names, and we'll have to go through that and decide whether they are Confederate or not.
Right.
Janice, I think there's also a listing of HOAs, and if you might want to reach out to the Park Authority's Public Information Office, because I think when they do master plans, they reach out to HOAs, so I think they might have a list.
Yeah, the planning division holds public meetings all the time, and they I know that they have many different lists of different organizations. So I am thinking about it, and as I said, I've started a list of things that we might be considering, and starting to think about agencies that I would be contacting. So.
And I would add here, when Liz and I have talked, that, they have parks that are called Leeville, they're neighborhood parks, and they're named after the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
So if the neighbor, if that particular development is named after Lee, then the park is named after Lee. It's like the Jeb Stewart Park is no longer that because the school changed its name and the park was near it. So that's connections there. So that would be very helpful, Liz. Thank you.
Would that be Park Authority then? If they're are they made neighborhood in public? They're publicly owned. Okay,
Yes.
not private parks.
Yeah, the neighborhood parks, the Park Authority calls them that. Liz, I'm speaking for you. I'm sorry, but and they're connected to whatever. They're small parks and often are called by the road that they're on or the development that they're near. Correct, Liz?
Correct.
Thank you. Okay.
I had one other question, and this is just very minuscule, but
Okay.
there are some street names that are not of Confederate people, but of Confederate names, like near Fairfax High School, there's Rebel Drive. Is that something that we want to include? Of course, that may be Fairfax City now I think about it, but.
Liz said that's Fairfax City, I think, right, Liz?
Okay.
Yes, it is Fairfax City.
Okay, all right. But I don't know, I was just sitting there and thinking, if they have Battle Manassas Drive, I'm making it up, obviously. Do we want to include that, or do we want to just stick to people?
Well, streets are there.
Right.
So
for example, Dixie Drive, right?
Yeah. And my friend lives on Point Long Street. And the whole community has Civil War names to it. So we're assuming it's General Longstreet, but it's not named General Longstreet.
Right. Well, I just want to say, yes, Dixie, my mother drove down in the early days, and this is like before 1925. She drove with her parents down the Dixie Highway when they were moving to North Carolina. And so that's been the Dixie Highway for a long, long time. That's just an example of the fact that these words are just everywhere. Not that that's helpful to anybody, but.
So maybe those fall under the ambiguous category.
So
Not sure Dixie that is very ambiguous.
Right. I don't. But they asked for Confederate names, right? They guess, yeah. So
that's a name for the South. Lynn wanted to say something.
Yes. Okay.
Lynn, I think you muted yourself.
Stuff off.
Am I back on?
Yes.
Okay. So what about North and South Streets?
You just go back to Clifton. No.
Well,
no.
Okay. Just thought I'd ask.
I'm making an arbitrary decision, and anybody, Denise, the people can overrule me, but no. Okay, so if that's all you have in Clifton, you're home free. So anything else? Pardon me?
Do we have parameters around the Confederate names? Are we looking at the world of Confederate names, or have we limited? Have we decided that we're limiting to specific?
I'm hoping that My interpretation is that we're doing specific, I'm going back to the original motion. The specific, wherever the wording is, the Confederate military and government.
Okay.
And I don't
Yeah.
know, I mean, unless it's a Jeff Davis Highway is gone. So I don't know of other people that were in the government, but that's my own ignorance probably.
Well, James Sangster of Burke was in the Confederate Treasury Department, and there's a Sangster Elementary School. I am looking right now at the muster roll of ex-Confederate soldiers and sailors of Fairfax County, Virginia. It's at the Virginia Room. I'm hoping that Chris can get that for us.
That would be very helpful.
That'd be helpful.
Yeah.
I mean, I do go back to this, the question of well-known. We have set ourselves up to be very kind of amorphous in our definition. You know, we can't take 750,000 or to 1 million names of Confederate troops of all sorts and make any sense out of that. So our definition is kind of vague, and I don't know how to make it any more precise, other than, you know, this whole do the best we can, and if we recognize them as Confederate names, we say them. Otherwise, how do you be comprehensive?
Their response to number 7. The HC can decide on a process that focuses on well-known Confederate officers and on locally well-known Confederates.
So far, our
It is
conversation,
not possible to capture every name, and that is our, and then in acknowledgement there will be ambiguous, because that to me is our safety valve, in that we can then decide. But that gives us a
I agree with you, Barbara, but I don't think we've defined it with any precision. You know, we're still saying well-known is real loose. So, I mean, we can just proceed like that. Mary's list of the muster names is very useful, but it gets way away from well-known, I would guess.
Well, and by well-known,
Yeah, I would suggest locally active or locally served in Northern Virginia or Fairfax County, because Mosby and Stewart were both active in our areas, okay?
Right.
And so they would definitely be on the list. But other of our Fairfax County men maybe served in Tennessee and never, you know, or they, you know, didn't do anything that we would recognize. There's I agree that we need some type of description. So if somebody's looking at General Bullock, which most people have never heard of, do I put him on the list, you know?
Well,
and that's where Barbara goes back to the answer to 7, which is the various generally known, well-known Confederate officers, locally well-known Confederates.
And I think go ahead, and I'll.
Well, I just think that's maybe this is something we'll keep at. You know, maybe we can't just, because we don't know all the resources. We don't know everything. So maybe we'll define this over time, but that's hard.
Right. What I was going to say is that the definition of well-known, now Greg would know many more than I do.
I know.
The Civil War here is not my thing, all right? And I live in Reston, and I've been through our list, and I assure you, the few named streets that are not named for horses or woods are 20th century people. So, but the point is that it depends on, we're going to rely on different people's expertise. Tammy may know more, Lynn may know more, but I think the way we define well-known, that is up to us, and I don't think we've got to get in and see what we have to work with first. That's maybe not the most efficient way, but I mean, if you said to Greg, you list everything that's well-known, and if you don't know it, then it's not well-known. That's a bit arbitrary at this time, don't you think?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the same for Tammy or Phyllis down there in Lee District. I asked her to tap into, see if Don Hackinson would help us because he certainly knows all the 28 Mosby places, doesn't he? So
almost everybody, this is Phyllis, almost everybody in Lee District that's part of Franconia Museum can be very helpful. And I'm going to be speaking with Don early next week.
good, thank you. That should be helpful. We really need that. So I don't mean to be vague, but I think we're vague at this point. We have a sense of where to go, and it's important that we bring in some partners that can help us that may know. I didn't know about Fort Pillow, which isn't Fairfax County, but it was a Geico ad about a woman building with her kids and referred to Fort Pillow, and it turns out that is a no-no because
And Willow Lane is in my neighborhood.
Killed all the most of 300 Union, and many of them were from the black troops. I did not know that. So we're all learning. So
Well, and my guess is that the ones with the really big names are the ones that are going to be the easiest to confirm.
right.
So, and so Bullock is one that, unless we can really figure out who named it and the intent behind it, we're not going to be able to put confirmed on there.
That's exactly right.
And so I think the big names are the ones we're going to be able to confirm the fastest. So.
Yes, and following that line of thought, you want to do those that we are absolutely sure of first.
Yeah.
So that you have a beginning and you're weeding out. So then, because that's done, because the time sink, you want those that you absolutely know first before you get into the time sink.
So thinking of the intern and how they might be most helpful, especially in starting on the street names, could I request from the committee maybe, and I think Greg Wilson would probably be, but others as well, but a list of, let's say, 20 to 50 names that are just off the top of your head, it are certainly well known, right? In nationally, but also in Fairfax County, Mosby. We know them, but Greg, you're going to know them better, best, and perhaps other people. But if I could just get a starting list of well-known Confederates, let's just get this started, right? And then we can delve into the 750,000 other Confederate soldiers. And
Greg, that's giving you some more assignments. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, no, happy to do that. Yeah.
well, if that could be a quick turnaround thing that I could get to the intern and have him start looking at the street names for those particular names.
Right.
That would be a first pass. That's that low hanging fruit that Tammy's talking about. And it gives, I want to use this person while we have him.
Absolutely. That's the concern. And anyone else, I mean, if you send in names and you have a couple more names than Greg did, that's that many more.
Yes. Oh, absolutely.
I'll early next week.
Okay.
Yeah, you can either, I don't know who should be the point person on this, but I'm just thinking because I'm working with the intern, if you can get me the names, then I can get them to the intern.
Yeah, I'll send you something early next week, Denise.
Thank you, Greg.
First part of the week.
Okay.
Thanks.
And Denise, I'm thinking of you as working with the intern because your staff as well as on the committee, and I've already raised the issue of how we deal with supervision, all of that, the technical, the logistical aspects of somebody that's on the payroll. Right?
Yes.
So I think that if you all agree, it would be Denise. Does anybody object to that?
That makes sense.
Thank you, Denise.
Okay. So where else do we go today? I think we have honed in on the critical.
Sorry.
That's okay. Recognizing that our big issue are the streets and the, that's it. Because the others, I think, are between Marion taking on the whole marker world and Liz with the Park Authority. I think that's what's left, and we know that that's really what we're doing. These other aspects, there are all these different aspects to the streets, but we don't have to deal with, our recommended guidelines we can put together and send in when we're ready.
And we've got the list, we've got the universe of streets, so that's very accessible. The minute we get the universe of all the other nouns in
That will help. Yes.
that will also, it just gives you, it's just, once you get the list, you can't wait to dive in. Yeah.
Craig,
Well, there's going to be clumps and stuff too, because like there's, Mosby Woods subdivision has, every street name in there, Tecumseh, Sherman. And I just looked up, yes, there is a Confederate lane in Mosby Woods, but just, they're going to come in clumps. Yeah.
All right, great.
When are we meeting again?
That was I hope maybe near the final. I think the 2 weeks, we all had thumbs up for 2 weeks. Do you all agree to that?
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
And Mike has said that if we let him know ahead of time, he can arrange to be with us because he's, still he works. Okay, so this is the 10th. That would be the 24th. If it's a Friday afternoon, Denise, I go to you really. And Liz.
Like Thursday's better.
Thursday's better? Okay.
Well, either one.
Thursday's good. We're on Friday because we used our math and that's not FOIA math. So that's why we're here instead of yesterday. We're here on Friday. So Thursday, Thursday is the 23rd.
That's fine too.
Is that all right?
Yeah. And afternoon works best for me.
That's good.
Is 2 o'clock okay? Again?
Fine.
Everybody?
Okay with me?
Yep, yeah.
Yeah,
Liz, is your calendar free for that time?
I believe so. Let me check.
Okay, the 23rd. And if that's okay with Denise? Phyllis and Carol, are you okay with that?
that works. This is Phyllis. That works for me.
Okay, Mary?
Mary's okay.
Okay, and
Carol.
And Carol, I apologize. Carol?
What time on the 23rd, Barbara?
Well, we would hope to do it at 2 again. Let's see, we're now at 10 of 4.
Is that the Thursday, the 22nd?
23rd.
23rd, Thursday the 23rd.
Yeah, I have a conflict at 2 o'clock on Thursday.
Okay. Would it
And,
last?
and it's a meeting I can't weasel out of.
You have to go. Okay. Greg's available afternoons, Wednesdays through Fridays.
About 4 o'clock on.
That's kind of late for.
Yeah, because it go to 6. Mm-hmm.
I could do 4 or even 3:30.
Or Friday, you guys.
Denise, what your schedule is full.
Yeah, it is, except that that I have been prioritized to work with this committee.
Okay. Well, we could try for the 22nd, which is a Wednesday. How's that? Greg, you're open Wednesday afternoons, you said?
Yep, anytime.
I'm free all day.
Is that all right, Tammy and Phyllis and Carol?
As long as it's afternoon.
Wednesday?
Wednesday, 7/27 at 2 o'clock.
And I prefer 2 because I think otherwise it's too late. We managed to do this in less than 2 hours. Thank you, Anne, for insisting it be longer than what I planned. Okay.
1 hour is so short.
Well, it takes a long time to read all the stuff.
For a first meeting, too.
Yeah, okay. So I hope you all are satisfied with what we've done. I think we just needed to talk like this to get to where we are. And we know what we're about and we know what we're not about, and that helps. That's defining in many ways. And I think, Tammy, your template will be great, and Ann and I will work on this letter that we're going to be sending out to our prospective partners. And Greg, you would sort of give advance notice to your group.
Will do.
Okay, great. Anything else? All right, I will declare this meeting adjourned at 3:49 according to my 3:50. At 3:50. All right. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Guys.
Thank you.
Good weekend.
Bye.
Bye.
Too.
Have a
Bye.
good weekend.